Did you know extreme Zionists contacted Nazi Germany? Their proposal was an alliance between them and Nazi Germany. That's right. During World War II, extreme Zionists contacted Nazi Germany. You may be baffled, because so was I when I read about it. How did the Nazis react, and why on earth did some Zionists want to ally themselves with the Third Reich? Keep watching. Good to have you back on the channel. If you're new on this channel, my name is Stefan. I'm a Dutch history teacher and I make videos about history, and I love these niche, peculiar topics, those strange topics you have never heard of. Today, we're going to focus on how extreme Zionists contacted Nazi Germany for a possible alliance. That's right, we have a lot to unpack here. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing that and also hit the notification bell. I'm not sure if YouTube is going to like this video. You can by pressing that like button, and if you really appreciate my endeavors of exploring niche history for you, consider supporting this channel. You can do that via Patreon, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, or a super thanks. The group we are talking about was Lehi, also known as the Stern Gang, officially known as the Fighters for the Freedom of Israel. This group originated in 1940 and was led by Avraham Stern. Who was he? Avraham Stern was born on the 23rd of December 1907 in the town of Suwalki in the province of Białystok, then under the rule of the Russian Empire. When World War I broke out, his mother took him and his brother to Siberia, where he stayed for a period of 6 years. At the age of 18 in 1925, Stern emigrated on his own to mandatory Palestine. He graduated from the Hebrew Gymnasia in Jerusalem and began studying classics and Hebrew literature at the Hebrew University. He was inspired by both the Bolshevik Revolution as well as the resurrection of the Polish state in the 1930s. After what he went through during the 1929 riots and what followed, he shaped his views on life, at first following the ideas of the revisionist movement, but later mostly rejecting those beliefs. The revisionist Zionist movement was developed by Zev Jabotinsky in the 1920s. This ideology advocated a revision on practical Zionism of David Ben-Gurion and Chaim Weizmann. The revisionists aimed for a Jewish state on both sides of the Jordan River. They wanted a Jewish state not just in today's Israel, but also in what is now Jordan. They pushed for large-scale immigration to Palestine and immediate statehood. As a political figure, Avraham Stern must undoubtedly be placed on the extreme right of the Yishuv and the Zionist movement, subject as he was to the influence of the European radical right of the interwar period and its integral nationalism. Though some of his heroes were of the Marxist left, he totally rejected communism. The left only influenced him by his technique of taking power. Stern's extreme vision went even further than Jabotinsky's revisionist Zionism. He completely rejected working with the British, viewing them as colonial rulers standing in the way of Jewish freedom. To Stern, the fight for the Jewish state was all or nothing. He believed it demanded total commitment and the use of radical tactics, including acts of terrorism. Under his leadership, Lehi became known as one of the most aggressive and hardline Zionist groups, carrying out assassinations, bombings, and bank robberies to support their cause. Stern didn't imagine a Jewish state as a peaceful democratic refuge, but rather as an ethnically exclusive nation run with authoritarian control, where Jews held absolute power. Stern imagined a future Jewish state very differently from most Zionist leaders of his time. While mainstream Zionists generally wanted a democratic country for Jews, Stern believed it should be ruled by a powerful centralized government, one that would enforce strict control and keep Jews firmly in charge. His ideas were influenced by fascist regimes in Europe, especially Mussolini's Italy, and this showed the way Lehi spoke and acted. Stalin thought that creating a Jewish state required kicking out the British and putting the Arab population under Jewish control. In this way, his beliefs were similar to the racist and nationalist ideas seen in European fascism. He admired strong authoritarian leaders like Mussolini and Hitler, not because he shared all their views, but because he respected their power and methods. Stern didn't believe in Aryan superiority like the Nazis did, but he did believe that Jews were a chosen people who should rule over others in their homeland. Lehi promoted the idea that Arabs would live under Jewish authority as second-class citizens. Stern's vision for a future was based on Jewish supremacy and a militarized society that would defend that dominance with force. He also believed that terrorism was a valid and necessary way to achieve independence. Lehi's violent acts weren't just to weaken the British, they were also meant to spread fear and show determination. One of their most well-known attacks was the assassination of Lord Moyne, a top British official in the Middle East in 1944. Even though Lehi claimed to be fighting for Jewish freedom, they copied the tactics and structure of fascist regimes. This mix of nationalism, violence, and authoritarianism made Lehi very different from the main Zionist movement. But some Jews, feeling desperate and angry, supported this more extreme approach. Even after Stern was killed in 1942, his ideas continued to guide Lehi and left a lasting impact on the history of Zionist militancy and Israeli politics. Lehi had split from the Irgun, and the Irgun was an offshoot of the Haganah. The Haganah was a Jewish paramilitary organization that operated in the British Mandate for Palestine. This organization later merged into the IDF, Israel Defense Forces. A more radical offshoot sprung up in 1931, and that was the Irgun, or Etzel, that committed acts of terrorism against Palestinian Arabs as well as against the British rulers. And then, in 1940, Lehi, or the Stern Gang, saw the light of day. Previously responsible for the Irgun's foreign relations, Stern left after disagreeing with the group's early policy of collaborating with the British. He believed that the Jews should aid the British war effort only after the British had given the Zionists their independence. When it became clear the British weren't willing to comply, Stern reached out to the Axis powers. Now, in a previous video I pointed out how Lehi reached out to Nazi Germany, but did you know they tried to do this twice? And he also reached out to fascist Italy. Abraham Stern believed Germany could be a useful partner in the fight to kick the British out of Palestine. Stern saw the British as the main obstacle to creating a Jewish state, and he was so focused on defeating them that he was willing to consider working with the Nazis to achieve that goal. In 1940, Lehi sent a proposal to Nazi officials through an intermediary in Beirut, which was then controlled by the Vichy French, who collaborated with the Nazis. Naftali Lubinczyk, a Lehi member, was sent to contact Nazi representatives and suggest a military partnership. In exchange for their support against the British, Lehi offered to help the Nazis with sabotage and intelligence operations in Palestine. Stern believed that if Lehi helped the Germans defeat the British, the Nazis might allow European Jews to move to Palestine instead of being killed. solving what the Nazis called the Jewish question, and helping Lehi build a Jewish state. The plan also proposed that Lehi's underground network could support German efforts by attacking British interests in the region. This plan was risky and desperate, showing how far Stern was willing to go, even ignoring the Nazis' violent hatred of Jews in order to achieve his dream of Jewish independence. Early 1941, Lehi made a second attempt to form an alliance with Nazi Germany. This time they aimed for direct talks with German officials in Beirut. Avraham Stern sent Nathan Yellenmor, a senior member of the group, to lead these discussions. The main idea behind Lehi's proposal was to create a Jewish fighting force that could join the Nazis in battling the British in the Middle East. In return, Lehi wanted Nazi support for setting up a Jewish state in Palestine after the war. The offer went even further by proposing that the future Jewish state would be founded on nationalist and authoritarian principles, similar to those of Nazi Germany. Lehi claimed it could recruit and organize up to 40,000 European Jews to fight alongside the Germans in the region. Stern believed that by siding with Germany, Lehi could secure political influence once the war was over. He thought this would help them win Nazi support for Jewish independence. The plan also included the creation of a Jewish army backed by the Nazis to drive the British out of Palestine. Stern's thinking was based on the belief that Nazi Germany would win the war, and he wanted to make sure Lehi was on the winning side, even if that meant cooperating with a regime that was responsible for the mass murder of Jews across Europe. We must notice that by early 1941 the Nazis hadn't invaded the USSR yet to exterminate the Soviet Jews by shooting. Also, the death camps were not yet a reality at that point. Lehi's outreach to Nazi Germany was a radical, desperate and morally blind attempt to gain support for Jewish statehood by allying with the enemy of its enemy, Britain. There is no evidence the Nazis took the proposal seriously or responded meaningfully. No formal reply was ever sent to Lehi, and thus Lehi's actions never resulted in collaboration. Lehi's offer reflected desperation, not sympathy with the Nazi ideology. Historians see it as a tragic miscalculation, not a conspiracy. Despite Stern's efforts, Nazi Germany ultimately turned down both of Lehi's offers. The Nazis had no interest in partnering with a Jewish group, even one willing to help fight the British. For the Nazis, their goal was the complete destruction of Jewish people, not helping them move to Palestine or build a state there. Nazi racial beliefs made any cooperation with Jews impossible, no matter what advantages it might bring. In addition, the Nazis didn't see Lehi as important enough to change their overall war plans. The Stern gang's activities in Palestine were small compared to the big political and military struggles of World War II. Nazi leaders thought that the benefits of working with Lehi were too small to justify the complications such a partnership would cause. When the Nazis rejected these proposals, it had serious consequences for Lehi. Stern and his followers found themselves isolated without the outside support they had hoped for from the Axis powers. This forced Lehi to keep fighting the British on their own, relying on a small group of loyal fighters and funding their actions through bank robberies and other illegal activities. Without Nazi backing, Lehi's influence within the wider Zionist movement stayed limited. as many mainstream Zionist leaders distanced themselves from Lehi's extreme tactics and its flirtation with fascist ideas. Although Lehi mainly tried to get support from Nazi Germany, the Stern gang also looked to fascist Italy under Mussolini as a possible ally. Avraham Stern and his group believed Mussolini's fascist government might help them fight against British control in Palestine. Mussolini had shown some interest in the Middle East because of his plans to expand Italy's empire. For a while, he even considered backing Zionist goals as a way to weaken British power in the region. Stern's attempts to connect with Mussolini followed the same idea in his effort with Nazi Germany to use the global war to challenge British rule and push for a Jewish state. The connection between some Zionist groups and Mussolini's Italy goes back to the 1930s. Certain parts of the revisionist Zionist movement admired fascism's focus on strong nationalism, strict control, and military power. In 1934, Jabotinsky, the founder of revisionist Zionism, visited Italy and met with Mussolini's representatives. Jabotinsky's movement wanted to gain Mussolini's support as a way to counter British influence. Lehi's efforts to reach out to Mussolini were not just practical but also based on shared ideas. Stern admired Mussolini's style of authoritarian nationalism and saw it as a model for the kind of Jewish state he wanted to create in Palestine. He imagined a country ruled by a strong, centralized government that would not tolerate opposition or diversity. Much like the fascist governments in Europe, Mussolini's government never supported Lehi though. After waiting in vain for a reply from the Axis powers at the start of 1942, Stern launched a short-lived campaign of violence by means of which he hoped to force the British government to give the Jews in Palestine their independence. Running low on money, Stern's group robbed a bank operated by the Histadrut, a labor organization with beliefs completely opposite to theirs. During the robbery, they accidentally killed 2 Jewish civilians. Just days later, they planted a bomb that killed 3 British Mandate policemen, 2 of whom were also Jewish. These violent acts made the group deeply unpopular, even among other Jews. When the police offered a reward for information, they quickly got a tip about where some of the gang members were hiding. A week after the bank robbery, police raided a house in Tel Aviv, killing 2 members of the group and injuring 2 others. One of the injured men, while recovering in the hospital, accidentally revealed where Stern was hiding. On February 12, British police found Stern hiding in a wardrobe in an apartment in Tel Aviv. They discovered him after noticing that his wet shaving brush suggested someone was secretly living there. As Stern tried to escape through a window while hurriedly dressing, he was shot and killed on the spot by British officer Stanley Hancock, along with Superintendent Geoffrey Morton. Morton later defended the shooting by pointing to a document written by Stern found in the apartment, which read, "I shall not keep quiet until I fall in battle." As Morton explained afterwards, "I was no armchair policeman." To all my viewers from Israel, I'm curious, how are Stern and Lehi remembered in the state of Israel as of today? Is he celebrated or rejected? The Arabs also reached out to the Nazis during World War II, and these relations evolved over time. Click here to learn more about the Nazi-Arab-Palestinian relations. Many thanks for watching, and the History Hustler is signing off.